Welcome back to another Thursday night YouTube Live. My name is Gino D'Angelo. I'm a local Northern Michigan real estate agent putting out content to help you become the most educated home buyer in Northern Michigan. Whether you want to relocate here today, tomorrow, 6 years from now, 10 years from now, I'm going to be here. And I hope you find these videos useful, whether you're watching live or on the replay. I know a lot of you watch these after they're published. It seems like we get 40 or 50 people live and then a few hundred after they are published. So thanks for watching. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so. It means a lot to me. It helps grow the channel. And this community has really turned into something special. Tonight, we've got a fun one. We're going to be talking about a lot of things, but mainly we're going to be talking about some oddities or some things that are unique to the Northern Michigan area, meaning things. This actually was sparked because last week I was talking to I'm not going to say their names. If they're watching and they want to shout themselves out, that's great. I was talking to a couple of clients of mine who are relocating here, and they were just telling me all the different things that they experienced. They're coming from Pennsylvania, and the stuff that they were seeing here that was unique to them. And it actually surprised me just how many things they were telling me were unique to this area and not common in other areas. So that caused me to sort of do a deep dive, and myself and my staff really looked into what makes Northern Michigan both obviously special and unique, and there are a lot of things. So we've got a long list of items we're going to talk about tonight. I've got some other topics, but the main event is going to be things that you may or may not know, or things that you should expect when relocating to Northern Michigan. We are certainly getting into the time of year when more and more people are deciding to raise their hand and engage the search. The winter market was slow. And we're very lucky that we were able to help a number of people both buy and sell in Northern Michigan. But I think it was a mix of things. I think we had high interest rates last fall, right into the election, specifically in Northern Michigan. Once we got outside of the election, we got a ton of snow this year, which I've talked about on just about every single live. And it's still coming. So I think a lot of people have just decided, and rightfully so, that if you didn't need a house right away or you weren't super motivated, then why look when there's 2 or 3 feet of snow on the ground? And then just getting here, just getting to Northern Michigan to tour houses has been a little bit of an issue this year. So that's what we're dealing with. Again, as always, please drop a comment. Let me know where you're from. I'd like to know where everybody's listening at, or where we're able to reach. We had somebody from Japan on a couple of episodes ago, which was crazy. I had no idea we would get that far. But again, thank you for watching these lives. They become one of my favorite hours of the week, and I've had a lot of fun looking for new content or trying to figure out what would add the most value for this, and just the interaction. The reason I do lives versus just static content or evergreen content is so you're able to be interactive and ask questions. And a lot of times you guys always ask good questions. A lot of times they have nothing to do with the topic of hand that we're talking about that night, and we get into some really interesting discussions. So again, if you're watching this live, thank you for taking time out of your day to join me. If you're watching the replay, thank you also for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss one of these. I put out a new video every single week. They are released Sunday at 1 o'clock. We've got a great one coming up this week that we did on location in Boyne Highlands. We're going to start doing a lot more videos out in public versus just in this great studio. So it's really, again, I say this a lot, we're really trying to give you an idea of exactly what it's like to live in Northern Michigan. And I feel that being in the field or in the community is a great way versus just talking in the studio with a little bit of B-roll put over it. So a couple of things that I want to talk about tonight. One, I just saw this article. I was just getting into the studio. Today is one of those days in Northern Michigan, and this is interesting to talk about. I truly believe that Northern Michigan, the reason people buy here is the lifestyle. In fact, today, this is one of the small luxuries of living here. It ended up being a beautiful afternoon, and I got all my work done. I was prepared for the live, followed up with everybody I need to follow up with, called everybody I need to call. So I snuck away for an hour and just got my snowboard and just spent an hour in the sun. And I was on the chairlift, and it really made me think that this is why we live in Northern Michigan, whether it's a quick couple runs in the afternoon in the winter or riding your bike in summer. Northern Michigan, living in Northern Michigan Northern Michigan is meant to be experienced. Now, sure, it is a pretty place that you can sit in your house and look out the window and watch the birds and the water and whatever else. But I believe living life the fullest in Northern Michigan means almost using Northern Michigan as a verb, meaning Northern Michigan is more of a lifestyle than a place, whether it's skiing, snowshoeing, cross country skiing, snowmobiling, ice fishing. Those are just the winter hobbies. And winter is the toughest time of year here. And the summer, I can't tell you how many people that I've helped relocate here that work from home that tell me that they feel that being able to ride their bike for an hour on their lunch break or go outside for an hour is truly one of the main reasons they relocated to Northern Michigan. Is, you get to live the vacation lifestyle year round. And I'm certainly blessed and very grateful that I get to do that. I know I'm helping a lot of people do the same thing. So I think that's truly, there's a lot of things when you look at Northern Michigan and how expensive it's gotten. I know sometimes it's hard for us to quantify why a house costs X when we think it should cost, less than X, but it's truly the ability to, live the lifestyle year round that some people are only able to live for a week, a couple of days a year, maybe a couple months. And a lot of us are able to be here full time. And again, that's why I'm so passionate about helping a lot of you relocate here, because I truly think this is one of a kind lifestyle. First comment, Frank V. Do you sell a lot of homes? Yeah, I might give me a call if you do. Absolutely. I love Antrim County. Antrim County is, I'm actually going to show you where Antrim County is in a second, for those of you that know. Yeah, I sell a ton in Antrim County. I think that is truly one of the more underrated. A couple of things about Antrim County. Depending on what part of Antrim County you want to be in, some of it is very rural, meaning if you want to live in the woods, Bel Air, I think Bel Air is great. Frank, I don't know how long you've been following me for. I think Bel Air is one of the most up and coming communities. I've done videos about it. I think you're going to see Bel Air really see a surge in property values this year, just because it's sort of on the cusp of the come up. I think it's so underrated. The quality of life there, the golf courses, skiing, close to the water, those sort of things. I think Bel Air is great. So whatever I can do to help you, Frank, feel free to reach out. Since Frank brought it up, I was going to get to this a little bit later. I got this email. Thank you so much for following. That means as much as anything can mean to me. Frank said he's been following me for a year, and I really appreciate that. I really hope we get to meet in person and I can shake your hand and thank you for the support, because if you were following me for a year, it's sort of popular to follow us now. If you were following me for a year, that means you were here when we had, less than 200 subscribers, and now we've got, almost 1,400. So you were one of our first fans, and I really appreciate that. So, all right, drop the comments below while I talk about this. I got this email. So I came into the office, I was at Boyne until about 5, came back, got ready, put this sweatshirt on. It says, let me hide it. The sweatshirt, I bought this sweatshirt a year ago downtown, and I've never worn it. It was in my closet. I thought I'm going to wear that tonight for the live, just to give a little bit of a laid back feel. So anyways, I get to the office early, get ready for the live. This is a major production. I got to turn the computer on. I got to get the lighting on. I got to get the camera, the microphone. And I'm just waiting for the clock to hit 7 p.m. And I got an email from MLive, which MLive, if you don't know, is a great website about all things Michigan. They cover the entire state. Typically it's Metro Detroit or Grand Rapids based, just because they have so much more. They have so much more activity than normal, but they do have some stuff happening in Northern Michigan. So one of the things I'm going to share this with you. Dewan just came and he must get done with his job. So enrollment decline in Northern Michigan. So check this out. I just saw this. So I literally looked at this a minute before this live. Let's see if I can zoom in. Where was it? It was talking about, here we go. It was talking about, I don't know if you can see this, I'll hover over it. It was talking about schools having a decline in enrollment. It was really interesting. If you look at Pellston, that's a little bit above Petoskey. Alanson actually had an increase. If you go over to Inland Lakes, that had an increase. Inland Lakes, that's Indian River, Afton, Toppinabee, that area. Up to Sheboygan had a decrease. It's really interesting to see where people who have school-age kids are relocating to, meaning the areas. it's a little bit harder to zoom in here. So Petoskey saw almost a 15% decline. And I think that's really interesting because we've seen so many people buy in Petoskey, and this has become a popular area. Um, I think the issue is the people that are moving here. The people that are leaving are the ones who have kids that are old in school here. The ones that are relocating are people that do not have kids here. So the green means those are positive changes. That means the schools are having a higher enrollment than they did in 2019, meaning pre-COVID. So all this middle region, and these are, let's face it, Pellston, Indian River, Alanson, those are the more affordable areas. If you go up to Mackinac City, that region away from the water, it's sort of inland, are the more affordable areas, which I think are attracting families with kids. So Harbor Springs, Petoskey, Elk Rapids, that's Antrim County, this whole stretch, Ellsworth, this whole area has saw a Bel Air. Look, Frank, if you're still watching, I just saw it. I lost it. Bel Air right here has a 23% decline. They went from having 260, they have 260 students enrolled right now, down from 340. If you go over Elk Rapids, 25%. So this whole area, which has seen a major increase in people relocating to the area, has also seen a decrease in the amount of students enrolled. Yeah, Ian said that's pretty shocking. I agree. And I haven't even had time to digest this because I literally saw this email at 6:50 as I was. And the only reason I even, I clicked on it was because I thought maybe there'd be something in there we're talking about tonight. And there actually was. So that's something that's going to be interesting to see. And I think that's more of an indication of what's happening on a macro level in Northern Michigan, meaning there are a lot of people relocating here. According to the statistics that we just showed, a lot of those people do not have kids enrolling in schools. And I'm genuinely curious what that means for funding and that sort of thing. So definitely something we're going to watch. So as promised, we're going to get into, I've got a whole list of things that may shock you about living in Northern Michigan. So if you're familiar with these, great. If any of these surprise you, if you want to talk any further, we can get into it. So I'm super excited. The first and foremost, the thing that surprises most people are well and septic systems. I can't tell you how many times somebody has relocated here and their biggest concern wasn't winter, wasn't driving in the snow. It was having to have a septic tank and water that was not provided by the local municipality. So unless you buy in downtown Traverse City or downtown Petoskey, mainly any downtown area, you're going to have a well and septic. Now, the caveat is there are some HOAs that have their own septic, their own well, that sort of thing. But by and large, you're either going to buy in the city and get city water and city sewer, which is what you would expect anywhere. Comes with a bill, you pay it every month, and life goes on. Versus in the country, or I shouldn't say in the country, but it's not even so much in the country. It's just outside of the cities where you're going to have a well and septic. And a couple of tips for well and septics are wells. What I think the benefit of having a well and septic is you don't get a city water and sewer bill. A well, you get a little bit of electricity because there's a pump that runs it, but a very affordable way to supply water to your house. I have had the question more times than once about, do I have to worry about the wells drying up? And maybe that's an issue in other areas. I've never once, and chat mentioned if you've ever heard of a well drying in Northern Michigan, I'd love to hear about it because I've been here for 41 years and I can't remember ever hearing about a well that went dry. So that's not something you have to worry about. The major thing you have to worry about is if you have a well, the well pump at some point is going to break and it's going to cost you $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 to fix, and then it should last you the rest of the time you own the house. That's the only thing really worth worrying about with a well. Septic's a little bit different. The only thing you really do need to do to maintain a septic is have it pumped every 2 years. Maybe a little more, maybe a little bit less, but you call one of the 10 companies that do it. They come out with a truck, like a tank truck with a big pipe. They suck out the septic and drive away, and life is good. So as somebody that grew up here and has had houses both with city water and sewer and well and septic, I'm here to tell you there is not a major difference between the two. I prefer well and septic as long as you make sure you want to have those two things inspected prior to purchasing the home, because well septic tanks are the way I grew up, my family owned a construction company. They installed septic systems all the time. They're very simple, primitive, um, not machines, whatever, contraptions, whatever you want to call them. There's only a couple things that can go wrong. Basically, it's a pipe that comes to your house into a big tank. There's a leach field. Sometimes the pipe that goes into the tank that gets wore out, you have to replace it. So just make sure if you buy a house and it has a well and septic, you get the septic tested to make sure it's fine. There's no major issues, which, by the way, is very easy to find. And then also test the water, because well water is common for having what's called, there's like a form of bacteria. I don't want to say chloroform, but it might be chloroform. That might be the wrong word. If it shows up, which it shows up often on well and septic tests, you just have to pay $100 or do it yourself to chlorinate the well, and life goes on. So insider tip, make sure if you're buying a house here, you're doing a home inspection, make sure you do a well and septic inspection also, because there are a few $100 to add on to your home inspection. The home inspectors all know what they're doing, and those are two big items that you want to make sure work. The one other thing I should mention about wells, and we don't run into this often, is making sure they have enough pressure. And typically that's as simple as turning the faucets on in the house. And as part of the home inspection, one thing the inspector will do is turn on all the faucets in the house to put as much stress on the well as possible to see how it reacts. And typically that's a very good way to find out the quality of the well. So well and septic systems, do not be afraid of them. Another one is land contracts. This is one that used to be a big deal, kind of went away, but I'm starting to feel like it's coming back again just a teeny bit. And I think that's because interest rates are so high. What a land contract is, and I didn't even know those. I was dealing with a lawyer in Texas one time. This was years and years ago. And we were talking about a land contract, and he had to Google what that meant. And I think there's another term for land contract called a purchase money mortgage. That's what it is. So land contract, basically, if you're not familiar with them, is you buy a house for $500,000, you give the seller $50,000 down, and then pay the $450,000 balance over a mutually agreed upon term. Sometimes it's 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years with a balloon. It's almost always with a balloon, because typically a seller doesn't want to sell and wait 30 years or 15 years to get all their money back. These benefit the buyer because it's a lot easier than going through the mortgage process. Benefits the seller because they typically get a higher price. We don't see a ton of these. I do wonder, with mortgage rates being a little bit higher, if we're going to see a little bit more of those. But as of today, still not a major issue. So Ian, don't worry too much. Let's talk about riparian rights. This is interesting. So riparian rights are they are referring to the Great Lakes. So if you own a house on Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, any of the Great Lakes, people are able to traverse the beach in front of your house, meaning you can't stop somebody from starting at the local park, walking all the way across the shoreline, and then walking back. They have riparian rights, meaning they're able to use the water. Now, I've got a couple of interesting stories about this. One that does not include the inland lakes. So Walloon Lake, Torch Lake, Burt Lake, Mullet Lake, that doesn't count. You own to the water. People can't traverse the water in front of your house. That is only on the Great Lakes. And I ran into this one time. I had this maybe like a $6 million piece of land listed in Bay Harbor right next to it. If you're familiar with Bay Harbor, it spans across the water. It's sort of bookend by West Park on the west end and East Park on the east end. So this home was actually this vacant land was actually close to the west end. So people were actually able to go into West Park and then walk in front of this property. So there was this, $6 million piece of land that the people tried to advertise as being super private. And a couple of buyers were like, this isn't super private when we can have anybody and their brother can walk in front of our house. So that's something that's interesting. I don't know if that's like that. I tried to do a little bit of research and I couldn't find out if this is like, my guess is the other states like Wisconsin, that have Illinois, that have frontage on the Great Lakes. My guess is they have the same riparian rights that Michigan does, but that was something I couldn't find before the live tonight. So just an interesting thought. Bottle deposit. This was a fun one. It is 10 cents per bottle in Michigan. They have been talking about raising it for years and years just because 10 cents when I was a kid wasn't very much money. And if 10 cents wasn't a lot of money 40 years ago, it is certainly not a lot of money today. So that's something that I know a lot of different states have different values for the cans. In fact, drop a comment if you live in a state that's not Michigan and you have pop cans. What is your redemption? What is your refund? And what do you do with your cans? Because if you're anything like us in Northern Michigan, for a long time we've just been recycling the cans and just waving our, throwing away the 10 cents we paid because I don't know if it's worth standing in line at Meijer on a Saturday morning putting 100 cans in the can machine for $10. I'd rather just not do that and donate the 10 cents to whoever gets it and still make sure I recycle the cans because you want to keep the beautiful earth beautiful, and that's important to us. So drop a comment if you're from anywhere outside of Michigan. Let me know what your pop can removal strategy is. This is another one. No disclosure of death requirement, meaning if somebody died, I get this question asked a lot, that somebody will ask me, did somebody die in the house? And I mean, luckily, most of the time the answer is no, but we do not. A lot of states I've learned have a disclosure of death requirement, meaning if somebody has died in the house, you have to tell them about it or tell people about it. In Michigan, we don't have that. So you're going to have to, luckily, Northern Michigan is small enough that if you Google an address and somebody died there, that's certainly going to come up and you'll be able to easily find that. So we do not have a disclosure of death requirement. Whether you're watching this live or watching the replay, drop a comment below. Would it bother you? Would you look differently? If there was a house you're interested in, but somebody had died in that, would you view that house differently? Meaning, would you be less likely to buy that house, or would it not bother you at all? So drop a comment below. Another big one is, a lot of people know about this, but homestead versus non-homestead tax rate. So if you're thinking about buying a house in Northern Michigan, and one of my first resources, one of my favorite resources that I like to tell about is called the State of Michigan. Write this down. State of Michigan Property Tax Estimator, meaning if you Google that, and I'll show it to you, I'll pull it up. I wasn't planning on doing this, but this will be helpful. So I'm going to show you exactly how to do this because I think this is super helpful. And if you're buying a home in Northern Michigan or anywhere in Michigan, this should be your first stop. So you just go to, I Googled Michigan Property Tax Estimator, begin estimating property taxes. So select the county, say Emmett County. Then you'll pick the township or village. So let's say Resort Township. Now, school district, most places in Northern Michigan only have one school district. So public schools in Petoskey. Hit search. So here's the millage rate. It's 23 mills. It is 18 mills more for non-homestead, meaning you save 18 mills by buying a house that is going to be your primary residence. The non-homestead is for vacation homes, investment properties, commercial properties. So in Resort Township, which is one of the most popular townships in Petoskey, 23 mills is pretty low. You can go over and look at the city of Petoskey. So Petoskey schools, search. The millage rate is 34. So 23 divided by 34. 23 divided by 34. The city of Petoskey is about 33% higher property taxes. So take that into account. If you add, if you're looking at a second home or an investment property, you're looking at 52 mills, which, is pretty substantial. So let's go back to the Resort Township example that I was showing you a second ago. So click Resort Township, Schools of Petoskey. Say you're looking at a $500,000 house. The SEV is typically half of the value of the house. So on a $250,000 house, the taxes are going to be $5,800, just a little bit over, for your principal residence or your homestead, meaning just your everyday house, or your non-homestead is going to be about $10,000 a year. Now that's Emmett County in a pretty, if you look at Sheboygan County, Let's one of the more rural townships, Ellis Township, in the Lake Schools. That's a very low millage rate also, 21. Anything below 23, 20 in that range is a very low millage rate. And that is one of the reasons that I think Northern Michigan is a lot more affordable than a lot of places. So take the property. Here's another thing that we should talk about when it comes to property taxes. This is a good exercise. If you're going to buy a house, this is something your realtor may not tell you, but I'm going to. You should look at what the current property taxes are on the house. Now, this is where it gets tricky. Depending on how long they've owned the house, that determines how low the taxes are going to be. Meaning, we're going to get to this. This is another thing. This is going to come up here, but I'm going to mix two of these topics into one. So, if you own a house, the property, the assessed value can only go up by the percent change in the consumer price index, which is usually 3, 4, maybe 5, usually not 5%, but usually right around 3%. For a long time, and specifically if you owned a house for 20 or 30 years, that property is going to appreciate at 5 or 6%. The last few years, 20%. So if you look at the appreciation going 3% more, if you're looking at the assessed value, the taxable value only being able to go up 3%, but appreciation is going up 5 or 6%, that means for 20 years, that property has gone up 60% more in value than the taxes were able to increase with it. Now, if that's confusing, drop a comment and I'll explain it a little bit differently. So the math problem is property taxes are only able to go up 3%. Properties are appreciating at 6%. That compounds, which is what makes real estate a great investment, but that compounds over 10, 20, 30 years. So you get to the end of it and you've got a house that's worth $500,000 that the tax assessor might only be able to say is worth $250,000, meaning they're getting taxed at a much lower rate. Now, what happens in Michigan when that property is sold, it becomes uncapped, meaning that cap is no longer there. That CPI, the percent change in CPI index is no longer there. The values are able to go up now. Now, the trick is usually they're not, I've been told time and time again, they're not allowed to follow sales, meaning if it's assessed at $250, but you buy it for $500, for an example, they can't just skyrocket the value all the way to $500. So typically what we've been seeing, and I've been tracking this because it's something that I think is very valuable to anybody considering buying a house in Northern Michigan, is it seems to be somewhere between 60 and 70% of the new price seems to be the rule. Now, again, this is not written in stone. It's just something I've observed. So we're not seeing the property taxes jump all the way to the new value. We're seeing them come about 70% of the new value. So the taxes are still going to go way up, especially if the person has owned the house for a long time, but the taxes are not going to go up nearly as much as they should, meaning you're still going to be taxed on less than the true value of your house. Got a couple of questions come in. Florida is 0. Deanna, what do you do with your cans then? If someone was murdered in the house, it might be an issue. Absolutely. I would think that's an issue too, Frank. I would definitely agree with you there. Let's look at a couple of these other ones. Michigan left turns. We do not have a lot of those in Northern Michigan. Those are a big deal in Metro Detroit. So if you live in Northern Michigan and you're going to Detroit to see a Tigers game or going to Grand Rapids to shop, we don't actually have left turns. You have to go straight to turn left, to come back up the road to turn right. So that is what's called a Michigan left turn, because they don't just let you turn left at the right. We've covered a couple of these. This is a new one that just happened. We have a hands-free driving law, meaning Candace helped me with this one because my assistant, because she just got in trouble for this. She was actually talking to me on the phone and I felt bad. And she got pulled over for being on her cell phone. And that is a new law that's been in effect for a while, that I was well aware of it, but I did not know they actually pull people over for it. I thought it was just a law. I told her that she should just tint her windows the same way I do. That way they can't see it. So maybe she will do that. Jeffrey and his wife are the reason I'm doing this live tonight, because they gave me this idea. They are relocating here and they have run into a number of these. So So the property, if you purchase a house and the taxes, yes, they cap again. So yeah. So right now, if you buy a house and it becomes uncapped, they reassess it. It goes whatever it is. That is the new cap. So yes, property taxes. Property taxes are become uncapped and then they're capped again. So you'll be safe. Traverse City is becoming, that is one thing. I'm gonna make this banner right now because this is roundabouts. Am I saying that right? Yeah, roundabout. So roundabouts, we see these. Gaylord has a few. Traverse City has a million. Petoskey doesn't have any yet. And I'm trying to think anywhere besides Gaylord and Traverse City have roundabouts. So roundabout is, if you're not familiar, I'm just gonna look it up because I can't. This is one of those things that I'm gonna have. It's hard to explain. So roundabout diagram. Here we go. See, look, this is why I like doing the live because now we're having a completely different conversation, but this is good. Let me share the screen first. Let me share the screen for a second. So this is what a roundabout is. I don't know if you have these any place other than Michigan. I don't want to do this with. I don't want to do it. I want to do a picture, image, not a picture. So basically, this is what a roundabout YouTube video. So basically, the cars come in, and I think the roundabouts are actually really good for. They're a really good use of traffic flow. If you get to a really busy area or it's a snowy day and you've got a trailer, I think they can be a little bit tricky. But roundabouts, all in all, are a great way to manage the flow of traffic in busy areas. Fife Lake has a roundabout. Yeah, that's sort of Traverse City-ish. So yeah, roundabouts, that's definitely a good one, Ian. Thank you for bringing that up. Do you think this is, Frank, this is so funny. I was actually just having this conversation with somebody. I think, yes, I've got a really good insurance agent who we work with all the time, and he treats our clients really well. Apparently, he's also camera shy because he won't come on the lives. So that's going to take a little bit of coaxing. I was just talking about this. Make sure there's a couple of things. I'm going to actually add a banner because this is something we're talking about that you just remembered me. It's something I learned the hard way. So yes, I think with the amount of snow we have here, that water has to go somewhere. And my fear is it's going to go in the lakes, rivers, streams, and a lot of people's basements. So if you live in Northern Michigan or you are moving to Northern Michigan, listen closely because I got in trouble with this one time. If you're buying a house that has a basement, make sure you get the basement insurance rider. It costs next to nothing and will protect you because if you're not in an area, look, basements themselves are something that could have made this list. I'm actually going to add this on because basements, we should talk about that. So basement insurance, this is in case your basement floods, that your insurance will pay somebody to come out and restore your house, get rid of the water. And I'll tell you this, I had a basement flood once, not terrible. I got very lucky, but because we had a sump pump and the sump pump broke, didn't work, whatever happened, for whatever reason, the sump pump didn't work. And like an inch of water got into my basement and it was a giant pain in the neck to clean out, but it wasn't catastrophic and it wasn't something that I couldn't just manage on my own. The person we had to come look at it, the restoration company we had to come look at it, said if that would have gone another inch or 2 inches, it could have caused major issues because then it gets into the walls and it seeps into the insulation. And then go in your basement. If you have a basement, go in your basement after this. Or if you're in your basement now, look around and just measure 3 inches of water. You know, you're starting to get into mechanicals. You're starting to get into TVs. You're starting to get into, a bigger problem in the walls where suddenly, having to repair all the new carpet and 3 inches of, drywall and insulation is a huge deal. So I tell everybody this that buys a house in Northern Michigan with a basement, make sure you have good insurance. Make sure you're not just trying to pay the lowest price possible, and make sure if you have a basement that you have insurance that's covering it in case it floods. Because Frank, and everybody else listening, I 100% think, I hope not, I hope I'm wrong, but I do think science is science. And it feels like there is just driving around Northern Michigan, I'm in a big vehicle and the snowbanks in a lot of places are so high that when I look out, I'm eye level with the snowbanks. That snow has to go somewhere. And I was going to pull this up tonight, the weather forecast. Somebody told me it's going to get 40. it's going to get 40 degrees next week, and that's going to start to be a problem. Okay, I'll share this with you just so you can see what I'm looking at. Here's a 10-day forecast for Petoskey. I'll just share this with you right now. Oh, Honda Civic Ed. So yeah, next week, I mean, it's 29, 25 is going to snow. I think we're going to be okay for now. I don't think it's going to, somebody told me it's going to get 40 degrees. That person may not have been telling the truth, or maybe just wishful thinking. I think that when it starts to, the issue we're going to have is when it starts to get warm and then freeze and then rain, that new rainwater mixed with the thawing snow is going to have no place to go. We had this issue a couple of years ago, probably more than a couple of years ago now, but a while back when that happened, and a lot of the, the lakes were way high, the rivers, if you have a house on Burt Lake or Walloon or something that's close to the water, you really have to be careful because that's going to become an issue. So yeah. Another thing that a question that I didn't add to the list, that I don't know why I didn't think of this until Frank just asked that question. Basements. We have multiple different kinds of basements in Northern Michigan. We have your typical walkout basement where it's underground, part of the house, half the house is outside. You have a door that walks into your backyard. Those are the most popular. Makes a house very big, gives it a lot of extra living space. Then we have what's called an unfinished basement. So there's unfinished walkouts, there's unfinished not walkouts, just regular basements. And then we have what's called a Michigan basement. Now, a Michigan basement sometimes has a dirt floor, always has a low ceiling. It's more of a place for storage or a place to get to the mechanicals. Usually it appears to be, 1,000 years old. It looks really old down there. But that's a question I get a lot because, they're called Michigan basements because my guess is you typically find them in Michigan. So another aspect of a home inspection that you want to check out is making sure that you're getting the basement inspected and making sure there's no leaks, there's no water. If you have a basement that does not a walkout, meaning the house isn't really, and the reason you wouldn't have a walkout basement is because the house isn't built on a hill. The house isn't built on a hill. It has a bigger problem with water runoff. So I would make sure that you have a crock and a sump pump. A crock is where all the runoff water goes, and a sump pump pumps it onto there. So as long as you have both of those things and both of them are working, you are good as gold, except when we've got 19 feet of snow and it starts to thaw, and those sump pumps are going to have a hard time keeping up. So just a little bit of food for thought there. Mineral rights. I'm not sure if mineral rights are a big deal in other areas. They were a big deal. There was an oil company that came through about 10 years ago that bought everybody's mineral rights because they were going to start drilling for oil. That never happened. I know some people have made a lot of money selling their mineral rights. It's really interesting because it's hard to determine if you actually own the mineral rights or not. There's a special search you can do. And this is anytime it comes up, I pass the question on to the title company, but there's a special search you can do for mineral rights to see if you have them or not. It's expensive and it takes a long time. And for whatever reason, nobody ever elects to do it. However, if a house has its mineral rights, it typically conveys with the property. So just keep that in mind. Private and seasonal roads. This is something that I didn't know. I guess I never thought of it being specific to Michigan, but now that it was brought to my attention that it's only here, or they've only, it's unique to this area, I guess it doesn't surprise me. We have a lot of seasonal roads here, specifically in the rural parts of Northern Michigan. And those are roads that you can drive down. If you drove down one in the spring, summer, fall, you'd probably think this is just kind of a small dirt road. Like it wouldn't feel like anything out of the ordinary. In the wintertime, they just don't plow them. You can drive your snowmobile down it. You can drive your ATV down it. They do not plow them. For whatever reason, they're called seasonal roads, meaning they're there. You can use them, but use them at your own risk because we are not taking care of them for you. We have a ton of them, including double ones. Nobody knows how to use them. Another benefit of Northern Michigan is we have no toll roads. That is something I didn't realize how big of a deal that was until I visited. I think one time, a long time ago, I drove to Chicago, and for a little bit of that stretch, you go through toll roads, and that is a giant pain in the neck. And also, I know Texas has them. I think Florida has them also. So I guess we're one of the few states left that don't have toll roads. And I'm definitely grateful that we don't, because maybe our roads would be in better condition if we had toll roads, but it's nice not worrying about it. And I think it is a giant pain in the neck when I'm in areas that do have them. So we're nearing the end of the list of unique things to Northern Michigan. We do have a property tax. This is a big one that I wanted to get to. Property tax foreclosure law. A lot of places give you 5, 6, 7, 10 years to pay your back taxes to avoid foreclosure. Michigan doesn't. In fact, there's a story I'm going to share with you where a man lost his home over an $8.41 tax bill. So let me share that in a second. This is a really sad story, but it came up in my search. There's an 83-year-old retired engineer, underpaid his property taxes. This is all it took for him to lose his house. He bought a 1,500 square foot house in Southfield, which is Metro Detroit, paid $60,000 for the property. The deed was recorded. He put additional money into the home. He believed that he was paying his property taxes that time in full, but in 2012, he received a notice he had underpaid his tax bill by $496. He paid up in 2000, but made a mistake figuring the interest. Interest also cured. So when the check was in the mail, they will still calculate interest by the day he was short. In response, Oakland County seized his property, put up for sale. The home netted just $24,000 at auction, according to Zillow. The property is now currently worth $130,000. Under the Act 123 of 1999, Michigan allows its county treasurers a great deal of authority to handle unpaid, including rushing tax foreclosure process. I think this was a very, hopefully very unique and also one-off story, because I've dealt with clients who've had back property taxes, certainly more than this gentleman's was. And it seemed like they do this almost feels like it was more of a person than the process, because everybody I know who's ever had back property taxes, they give you so many notices. A fun fact is if you have a mortgage on the property, the mortgage has the first lien, meaning they will often pay your taxes and then charge you if you do not pay them to avoid foreclosure. Because the property tax, if the local treasurer forecloses on a house that has a mortgage, that mortgage company is left holding the bag, and they're going to definitely avoid that from happening. So these are just a couple of things that I find interesting about living in Northern Michigan. The last one is a little bit controversial, and this is new here, is we have legalized marijuana, specifically legalized marijuana dispensaries. Now, there's a couple of big companies that do it here. There's a couple towns in Northern Michigan who have really adopted that form of business, and you see them everywhere. I'm not super involved in that industry. I've had some clients that have had buildings that have helped them sell. It seems like the market is correcting themselves. When this was first legalized, there was a rush, and it seemed like there was a lot of people that were opening these shops. I have seen a lot of them close down, or there's one in Petoskey right now that was being built that they never put anything in. There are certainly designated areas, and I know there's a lot of states that are becoming a lot more marijuana friendly than they once were. And Michigan appears to be one of those, but it's only in specific areas. This kind of like the short-term rental situation where it's obviously very controversial. So don't be surprised. I've had some people, the reason this came up is I've had people that were relocating here say, wow, they drove through certain areas and they say, well, there's a lot of marijuana stores here. And I guess I just don't notice it, because when you're here and you don't really pay attention, that's just sort of what it is. So I wanted to share this with you tonight because it seems like every week we get closer to spring, I get more and more of you and others reaching out to me to relocate to Northern Michigan. And again, my number one goal with this channel, whether it's these lives or the videos we make every week, is to make you the most educated home buyer in Northern Michigan. And I hope these videos do so. So without further ado, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. I'm going to ramble on for a little bit longer. I truly appreciate all of you watching, specifically those of you that come back every week and watch these live and spend your Thursday night with me. It means a lot, and I'm grateful that I get to talk to a lot of you on the phone, or that a lot of you stopped in the office, or I've got to meet you and help you purchase your home or help you get the process started. So obviously I'm eternally grateful for that. As always, reach out to me directly if you have any questions. You can email me at gino@ginodangelo.com. You can call me at 231-487-6141. Follow me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. I've got a few Instagram accounts for different things, for different aspects of the area. I've got, follow me on my personal page. If you find me on Facebook and you want to add me, I'll add you back. Same on Instagram. And again, I really appreciate you being such a big part of this community and supporting me every week. And I will strive to make the best videos possible. That way you always want to come back and watch them. So without further ado, have a good night, and I will see you next week.